All right, here we are on the very last section for this class, 25.2, and we're going to be talking about graphs. And so we're going to look at different types of graphs and how they can help us understand information. So a graph allows us to visualize complex data and in an understandable way. So that just means we can look at a graph and we can see the data laid out in a way that makes it easier for us to understand. And these are the types of graph we're going to talk about today: line graphs, bar graphs, circle graphs, and graphs for group data, which, I'll explain that when I get to that. And then here is a line graph. So line graphs are good for showing trends over a period of time, and when we make line graphs, as you can see, we put the time along the horizontal axis at the bottom. So in this case, you can see that we have April and May, June and July down here on the horizontal, and then over here on the vertical we have the number of inches of rain, and it's very easy to see what's going on. Now it has to have a title because the title tells us what's going on. If we had no title, then we'd just be guessing. We might come up with the fact that it's rainfall, but still it needs a title. Here is a graph about mobile phone sales in millions. So when we're looking at that vertical axis, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that means that it's 1 million in sales, 2 million in sales, 3 million, and so on. And then the years are from 2010 to 2014. And you can see a definite trend on this, that the number of cell phones that are being sold is rising. Now, there was a little bit of a dip at one point from 2011 to 2012, but then after that, it's increasing pretty steadily. And so that's a trend, right? The trend is, hey, they're selling more cell phones, and that would make sense to us that from 2010 to 2014, we went from 1 million to 5 million in mobile phone sales. Now, sometimes you can make a graph that is not showing what it was supposed to show. And that has to do with how you label it. And so when you're looking at this, notice the graph on the left, and you might want to pause this and just read all this information up above. Don't be a victim of graph abuse, because I'm not going to just read that whole thing to you, but definitely you want to read it. So the one on the left is prepared properly because we started at 0 and we went to 600,000. And so that's showing a better look at grocery sales than the other one. The other one makes it look like there was this really steep increase. But when you look at the one on the left, you can see it's increasing, but it's not like a drastic increase over the years of the 5-year period that we're looking at on this graph. So the way you label is super important. And sometimes there are graphs that are made deliberately to look a certain way because somebody's trying to, make a case for something. And when they put the data on there, they're using it in a way that is actually just kind of deceptive, and that's not really good. Now let's look at this next one. Which graph displays the data most accurately? So this is Arkansas football wins from the year 2000 to 2016. And we can see on the left is wins per year, and we go all the way up to maybe about 11 because it's between 10 and 12.5. And so that might be 11 wins right there. And so we're going anywhere from the low would probably be 3 and the high would be 11. So I'm hoping that you're looking at the two graphs and thinking that the one on the left shows the data better. And that's because of how that vertical axis is labeled. Notice it starts with 0 and then it's in increments of 2.5. It's important that the increments are even. So 0, 2.5, 5, 7.5, and so on. But the one on the right starts at 0 and jumps to 25, 50, 75, and then 100, even though that one's a little bit where you can't see it. This top was 100. So I didn't write that very good, but 100. And that is not accurate at all. First of all, nobody plays 100 games in a year, or even 25 when it's football. And so it's just labeled improperly. So notice that the horizontal axis is labeled the same, but the vertical axis is what makes this data appear to be very different than what it looks like on the left. So just another one of those. You need to be careful how you label. Okay, so when we're making a line graph, and you guys, there's not a huge emphasis on making graphs in this section. It's more about understanding graphs and reading graphs, but we are going to do a little bit of making graphs. So that we put the time intervals on the horizontal axis, and then we put the amounts with even increments on the vertical axis. So you can see like this has a scale of 100, 0, 100, 200, and so on. And then we're going to, our points are plotted that correspond to the year and dollar amount. The points are connected with straight lines. And then we're able to see the trends, right? The trends are showing with this line graph. We should label our vertical axis and our horizontal axis, and it needs a title. So you can see all those things are important when you are looking at a line graph or any other graph as far as that is concerned. We've got some labeling we need to do to make it accurate. We are going to prepare a line graph here, and then we have to make some decisions on how we're going to label some things. And so this is just some data I found online about climate in Springfield, Missouri, the average high in degrees Fahrenheit and the average lows in degrees Fahrenheit for January through June. And so I think you pretty much know the trend. It's going to get warmer from January through June. But that's okay, because this was really just about a little bit of practice on making a line graph. So I'm going to label the graph, and I'm going to say average temps. I'm going to abbreviate here. Average temps in Springfield, Mo. And that's good enough. Now you can abbreviate things, or you can write it out however you want to do. That's fine. We're just practicing a little bit. Now remember, we put time on the horizontal axis, so we're going to label this with January, February, March, April, June, and July. And I guess I should put the periods on there. I don't know if that's really a big deal. Anyway, we know that that's the months. Yeah, I have that kind of silly looking, I guess, there. That one's further away. I don't know. Okay. So we have our months labeled, and then we have to, this is the hardest part really, figuring out how you're going to set your increments along that left-hand side, along the vertical axis. And so when you're looking at the data, our low is 22 and our high is 84. You might have to just figure this, think about it. Oh, I'm going to go by tens. And then I didn't really give you a graph that would work by tens. Or you're going to go by 20s, and that's a little bit too much. What I'm going to do are 15s, like every 15 degrees. So this is, of course, the months of the year. And this is going to be degrees in Fahrenheit, right? I don't know. I'll just do it like this. That's probably overkill, degrees and then degrees. Well, anyway, so we're going to go by 15s. So that means that this is going to be 0, 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, and 90. And then we're going to simply graph each one. And now I'm going to do kind of a color code, right? So this one's going to be a pink line, and this one is going to be kind of a turquoise aqua line. I don't know what color it is. Blue. We'll just call it blue. How's that? Okay, so we need to graph these before I run out of time on this video. Okay, so let's graph. And now you're going to have to estimate. So between 30 and 45, midway would be about 7.5, right? And so our first temperature is at 43, so I'm going to go a little below that. We just have to estimate. That's the best we can do. 48 degrees would be a little bit above the 45. 58 degrees, we're almost to the 58. And you know, my estimates may not be perfect. 67 is close to the middle because remember it's 7.5 degrees would be right in the middle. 75 degrees is spot on right here. And then 84 degrees would be, let's see, 7.5, that would be 82.5. So it's going to be a little over halfway. And so you can see that it's a pretty steady trend, and I'm going to connect those. I have a drawing device that makes nice straight lines, so there it would be our average high temperature, and then our average low temperature starts at 22, and 22.5 is right in the middle, so we're very close to the middle here with this first one. 26 then would just be a little bit higher. 35, okay, so 35 is going to be below the halfway mark for sure. And 44, so we're going to put it very close to the 45. 54, so that's 9 degrees above 45, so we're going to be a little over half. And then last is 63, and so we're going to be a little bit above the 60. Oh, I don't have a straight line for the blues, so I'm just going to have to draw those. They're not going to be as nice as my pink ones were. But once again, we can see a trend. The temperature is definitely rising from January until we get to June. And hopefully I've got those all in a decent spot. Okay, so I'm going to end this video and then I'll start up with the rest of this lesson on the next video.